Geronimo Stilton. Watch your whiskers, Stilton. Scholastic. The Roaring Rat. It was a sunny July morning. The sun was so hot, you could grill a cheese sandwich on the sidewalk. I went to have breakfast at the corner diner, as usual. I ordered a coffee and a cheese Danish, as usual. Then I went to the newsstand, as usual. I wanted to get a freshly printed copy of my newspaper. Oh, but I haven't told you yet. My name is Stilton, Geronimo Stilton. I run the Rodens Gazette. It's the most popular newspaper here on Mouse Island. As I was saying, I went to get a copy of my newspaper, as usual. But something unusual was going on. I could not find a copy of the paper. Not a single one. I was so puzzled, I had to ask the newsdealer about it. "Excuse me, Inky Paws," I said. "I am looking for my usual copy of the Rodens Gazette." Inky Paws looked uncomfortable. He scratched his whiskers. I don't have one," he said. Now I was even more puzzled. "Why not? Are you sold out?" Inky Paws shook his head. He stared at his paws. "Mr. Stilton, the truth is, I do not sell the Rodens Gazette anymore," he blurted out. I couldn't believe my big mouse ears. "Since when?" Inky Paws pointed to the piles of newspapers. They all had the same title on the masthead, The Roaring Rat. "A one-eyed rat came by this morning," he explained. "He offered me an enormous amount of money to sell nothing but The Roaring Rat. Then he took away all the copies of the Rodens Gazette." I stared at Inky Paws, unable to squeak. "I'm sorry, Mr. Stilton," Inky Paws said. "Business is business." He waved a check in front of my snout. It was from the Roaring Rat. And it had more zeros than the stinks morse than a nund of moldy cheese hunk of Swiss has holes. I fumed. I grabbed a copy of The Roaring Rat. I wanted to see what this one-eyed rat was up to. As I read the front page story, my whiskers started to twitch. A one-eyed rat. I hurried to the office as fast as my paws could take me. I had to find out what was going on. On the way, I passed a bookstore. I looked in the window, as usual. There is always a copy of my latest book displayed there. But this was not a usual morning. My latest book was not in the window. I ran inside. I searched high and low, but I could not find a single book by my company, Stilton Publishing. Instead, all of the books came from a new company, the Roaring Rat Group. Bats About Books, the owner of the store, looked nervous to see me. Bats About is a little snobby, but he has always been happy to sell my books. "I take it you've heard the news, Mr. Stilton," he squeaked. "I'm sorry, but I can no longer sell books from Stilton Publishing. I received a proposal from a one-eyed rat early this morning." Bats About showed me a check from the Roaring Rat Group. This one had so many zeros, it made me dizzy. I turned as pale as a piece of mozzarella. Then I left the store without a word. "This is much worse than I thought," I muttered. I hurried to 17 Swiss Cheese Center. My whiskers were tremble rushed into my office. Then I screamed for my secretary. "Musila!" I screamed for my secretary. "Who is this mysterious rat?" The entire staff of my newspaper came running into my office. They were all squeaking at once. "Mr. Stilton? Did you hear the news? Every newsstand on the island is carrying only the Roaring Rat. Every bookstore is selling only books by the Roaring Rat Group." I sank into my chair. This means things are much, much worse than I thought. I cried. I needed more information. I turned on the television. Walter Newsinos, the famous reporter on New Mouse Island, was giving a special edition report. "We have breaking news," Walter said. "This morning, a mysterious one-eyed rat went to every newsstand and bookstore on Mouse Island. The rat claimed to be the owner of the Roaring Rat Group. He bought every book and paper by Stilton Publishing and had them sent to the recycling center. Who is this mysterious rat who is ruining Geronimo Stilton?" My whiskers quivered. My tail trembled. I jumped out of my seat. "Putrid cheese puffs!" I yelled. "This is much, much, much worse than I thought." William Shortpaws, also known as Cheap Mouse Willie. At that moment, the phone rang. I answered it. "Hello. Is this Stilton, Geronimo Stilton?" It was Aunt Sweetfur, my favorite auntie. When I was a little mouselet, she read bedtime stories to me. Jack and the Cheese Stick, Snow Rat and the 7 Mice, Little Red Riding Hood, all of the greats. "Nephew, I have some bad news for you," Aunt Sweetfur began. "Dreadful news. I don't know how to put this. It's about Grandfather William." A shiver ran through my fur. Everyone is afraid of my grandfather William Shortpaws, also known as Cheap Mouse Willie. He is the founder of the Rodents Gazette. He thinks nobody knows how to run a newspaper but him. "Aunt Sweetfur, tell me the truth," I said. "Is Grandfather William ill?" A loud voice roared on the other end of the phone. "Fat chance. It was Grandfather William." "I'm feeling fine, grandson. But you had better do something right now to save the company. If you don't, I am coming back to take over Stilton Publishing. Is that clear?" How was I supposed to save the company from a mysterious one-eyed rat? I started to protest. "But, Grandfather, stop squeaking and get moving," Grandfather William yelled. Then he hung up on me. I felt pretty terrible. This was worse than that time I got cheddar chewing gum stuck in my whiskers. Worse than that time I had the measles and broke out in red spots all over my fur. Worse than when I had a bad reaction to some overripe Munster and thought I was allergic to cheese. I started to sob. Soon my snout was soaked with fears. This means things are much, 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 much worse than I thought. That's hitting below the belt. The phone rang again. This time it was Leona Misermouse. She is the owner of 17 Swiss cheese centers. She is very rich, but she hates to spend any money. She reminds me of Grandfather William. "Good morning, Mr. Stilton," Leona began. She sounded nervous. "I'm afraid I must ask you to leave the building. This morning a one-eyed rat offered me an enormous amount of money to rent out your offices." Of course, I said yes. I felt like I had been hit by a cheese truck. "What? Are you kicking us out of the building?" "I'm ever so sorry," said Leona. But she didn't sound sorry. "I would like you to leave as soon as possible. The new owner's furniture will be there this afternoon." "This afternoon?" I squeaked louder than a mouse whose tail has been run over by a cheese delivery truck. "This is outrageous." My anger did not seem to bother Leona Misermouse. "Business is business, Mr. Stilton," she said. "The owner of the Roaring Rat offered me so much money, I couldn't say no." I hung up the phone. I fell back into my chair. I thumped my snout on my desk. Things are much, 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 much worse than I thought. I moaned. He should be ashamed of himself. The phone rang again. I picked it up. "What now?" I squeaked. I just knew it had to be more bad news. I was right. On the other end was Ledger Moneymouse. He is the manager of Rattlay's bank. The Rodents Gazette borrows a lot of money from Rattlay's. I knew what was coming. I bet you are going to tell me that you are calling IL all of our loans, I said. Moneymouse squeaked in surprise. Yes. I kept going. And I bet you're going to tell me you're sorry, but we can't borrow money from you anymore. Yes. Yes. I went on. And I bet you're going to tell me that Rattlay's bank was bought by a one-eyed rat. Yes. 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 Moneymouse shouted. I shouted right back at him. Tell him he is not playing fair. He should be ashamed of himself. Whoever he is. I slammed down the phone. My whiskers were drooping. My paws were shaking. This means things are much, 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 much worse than I thought. I wailed. We are in big trouble. I couldn't take the stress anymore. Things were moving fast. Todd fast. Faster than a hamster on a treadmill. Faster than being chased by a cat. Faster than New Mouse City's annual rat race. I fainted. Marcella took a piece of blue cheese and waved it under my nose. The strong smell woke me up. I could hear my staff members muttering. Who is this mysterious rat? Why does he want to ruin the Rodents Gazette? I came to my senses. What kind of a mouse was I? My staff needed me. I had to be strong. Quiet. I shouted. Everyone stared at me. It's true. We are in big trouble, I said. But that just means we have to be strong. We have to stay calm. There is a solution for every problem. We will get through this. Everyone cheered. Then Dusty Dustwell, the cleaning lady, spoke up. Great speech, Mr. Stilton. So what do we do now? I smoothed my fur. I wiggled my ears. I cleared my throat. I opened my mouth to speak and burst into tears. I don't know. I wailed. I fell to the floor, crying. Through my sobs, I could hear the other mice talking about me. Poor Mr. Stilton. After all he has done for the company. What will cheap Mouse Willie have to say about this? Tam's sure he will do something terrible to Geronimo. This is worse than a hunk of Swiss cheese with no holes. Worse than being caught in a rat trap. Worse than a cheeseburger with no cheese. Slimy Swiss rolls, I'm glad I'm not in Mr. Stilton's fur right now. Mouse tears. The door to my office flew open. My sister, Thea, burst into the room. She is the special correspondent for the Rodents Gazette. She held my favorite nephew, Benjamin, by the paw. Jerry Berry, she yelled. Dry those tears. This is no time for sniveling. You must do something. Now. Benjamin ran up to me. He kissed the of my snout. Yes, Uncle Geronimo. You must do something right now. Before it's too late. I squeezed my tear-soaked pocketkerchief. A salty puddle had formed at my feet. But what can I do? I sobbed. Thea scolded me. Shame on you, Geronimo. Snap out of it. You can't let the company go down without a fight. Thea was right. I wiped my whiskers. Then I turned to my staff. Friends, I began, choking back tears. We have known one another for a long time. We have shared good times and bad times here at the Rodents Gazette. We are a team. Today, I need my team more than ever. Can I count on your help? The staff was silent for a moment. Then they all shouted, yes, I knew this was an important moment. I had the staff behind me. We had to do something. It was now or never. I glanced at a copy of the Rodents Gazette from the day before. The page was open to the classifieds. Out of the corner of my eye, I noticed an ad. Watch your whiskers. Here comes SHIFT, pause. Looking for a solution to poor distribution? Is business so bad you're worried and sad? Cheer up. Have no fear. SHIFT, pause is here. When things are a mess, SHIFT, pause is the best. SHIFT, pause, a mouse with a mission. The ad gave me an idea. I grabbed the paper. Then I waved it in the air like a flag. If we can't sell our products in bookstores and newsstands, we will find some other way to sell them. I announced. And I know just the mouse for the job. Our old business manager, Shifty, pause. I swear on my collection of antique cheese rinds, we will pull through this. 3 cheers for the Rodents Gazette. The staff let out a shout. Hurrah! 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 Hurrah for Geronimo Stilton. Hurrah for the Rodents Gazette. Murak for the Rodents Gazette. When you get right down to it. I called the number in the ad and left a message. Then I waited. I didn't have to wait long. 5 minutes later, I heard a voice outside my door. Watch your whiskers. Here comes Shifty, pause. S is for Super Sales Mouse. H is for Happy Times Ahead. I is for improving your business. F is for fast results. T is for time to get moving. T is for put your paws together. A is for all is not lost. W is for watch your whiskers. S is for stop your worrying. Shift T, pause is here. The door flew open. It slammed into my snout, crushing my whiskers. I stuck to the door like cheese on pizza. Then I slid to the floor and fainted. Musella revived me with more blue cheese. I opened my eyes and saw the mouse who had flung the door open. He was a fall rodent wearing a gray suit and striped tie. The top of his head was as round and furless as a ball of mozzarella. Wire-rimmed glasses perched on the tip of his snout. Cell phones hung all over him like ornaments on a Christmas tree. He had a yellow cell phone behind his right ear, a red cell phone in the pocket of his jacket, a blue one in his shirt pocket, a green one in his back pants pocket, and a pink cell phone hung around his neck. Schiff! I cried, bouncing up to my paws. It's great to see you again. You see, Schiff T had worked at the Rodents Gazette before. In fact, he'd helped me out of a tough spot when my grandfather William Shortpaws, also known as Cheap Mouse Willie, had fired the entire staff. Schiff T had left us a year ago to pursue a business opportunity in Ratzakistan, selling ice to Eskimos. Only a sales mouse like Schiff T could pull something like that off. I had no idea he'd come back to New Mouse City, but holy cheese, was I glad he had. Good morning, Miss. I stepped back, startled. There is no need to shout, I said. My ears are not stuffed with cheese. But Schiff T only got louder. When you get right down to it, Stilton, how big is the company these days? He asked. I started to reply. Well, we have about dash. He did not wait for me to answer. When you get right down to it, what is the problem? Tried again. Well, the problem is when so get right down to it, what is my salary? I wasn't sure what to say, I think. When you get right down to it, double your offer and I can start right now. Where's my office? Ah, that way. I guessed as much. I'll be right back. Before I could think, Shift T grabbed the blue cheese from Marcella. Blue cheese! My favorite, he squeaked. Then he turned and ran out of my office. I heard him yell as he scurried down the hall. Watch your whiskers, here comes Shift T, pause. I'm running the show here now. So move your tails, everyone. It's selling time. That Shift T, pause is a born sales mouse, Marcella whispered. You are lucky to have him, Mr. Stilton. Do you think so? I asked. I really wasn't sure. Come on, it's selling time. 30 seconds later, the door flew open again. I jumped. Shift T, pause was back. He hopped on my desk. He took a microphone out of his jacket. Then he began to squeak orders at my staff. We need to sell. Sell, sell, sell. S-E-L-L. Get it? He shouted. Sell. He paused. Then he announced his plan. First target. Supermarkets and shopping malls. We will stand at all the entrances and sell papers to the rodents while they shop. We will stand outside supermarkets. Second target. Roads. We will stand at traffic lights and sell to rats in their cars. We will sell papers at traffic lights. Third target. Train and subway stations. We will stand at train and subway stations 24/7. We can sell books and newspapers to rodents on the go. We will go to the train stations. Fourth target. Door to door. We will knock on the door of every house and apartment in New Mouse City with hot-off-the-press copies of the Rodents Gazette. We will knock on doors. Fifth target. Beaches. Rodents getting their fur tan need to read, too. We will go to all of the beaches on Mouse Island to sell our books and newspapers. We will go to the beaches. Sixth target. Movie theaters. We will sell to rodents as they come and go to the movies. We will stand outside movie theaters. Shift T's eyes shone behind his glasses. Are you all with me? Come on, it's selling time, he yelled. The staff was silent for a moment. They all looked at one another. Then they cried out, hurrah for Shift T, pause. That's the spirit. Shift T shouted. We will save the Rodents Gazette. Everyone cheered. Then Shift T suddenly looked upset. Crusty keypads. Shift T shrieked. I've lost my favorite cell phone. The sales mouse fan out of the room. I stepped forward. I wanted to inspire my staff the way Shift T, pause had. Friends dash I began. But a cry rang out. Watch your whiskers, Shift T, pause is here. Shift T ran back into the office, pushing open the door. Once again, it slammed into me. I was as flat as a slice of American cheese. I slid to the floor. Good news, Stilton, Shift T said. I found my cell phone. I left it in the bathroom. Luckily, Marcella had another piece of blue cheese. The smell worked instantly. I stood up. She is the editor-in-chief of the newspaper. She is also a good friend. I would like to make an announcement, she said. The staff of the Rodents Gazette will give up their vacation time so we can work to save the newspaper. I was so moved. I secretly wiped a tear from my eye. Creamy went on. We have also agreed to whirls for free until these tough times are over. Shift T, pause slapped me on the back. We will pull through, Stilton, he said. When you get right down to it, we will save the paper. I'll stake my fur on it or my name isn't Shift T. Pause. My fur felt fried. Shift T. Pause took back the microphone. We need to find new offices right away. Any ideas? Musella spoke up. My cousin is a baker, she said. His name is Bagel Buckwheat. He has a large basement at 85 Curds Court. We could move the business there for now. Shift T looked pleased. Excellent, he said. We will all meet at 11 o'clock tonight at 85 Curds Court. Now, everyone come and take a pile of books and papers. Move those tails. It's selling time. Everyone took their piles and headed out to enact Shift T's plan. Everyone but Thea, that is. She was sitting at the computer, surfing the net. I could tell by the look on her face that she had an idea. Before I could ask her about it, Shift T hung a sack of newspapers around my shoulders. Then he stuffed a huge pile of books into my paws. Move your tail, Stilton, he squeaked. We need to sell every last copy before tonight. It's selling time. I started to protest. But Shift T Pause pushed me out the door. See you at 11, Stilton. I left the building, shaking my head. It was hard to argue with Shift T Pause. I found a good selling spot at the corner of Limburger Lane and Parmesan Place. I stood right next to the traffic light. When drivers stopped at the red light, I would shout, "Papers. Get the latest news fresh off the press." Cheese niblets, I had a tough time. It was so hot that all of the drivers had their air conditioners on and their windows shut. Most of them pretended not to see me. I tried pushing the books. Books for sale. Nothing beats a good book on a hot summer day. But only a few people stopped to buy anything. The day dragged on. It got hotter and hotter. My fur felt fried. And I had forgotten to put sunscreen on my snout. I felt like giving up. I was about to walk away when a long, fancy car pulled up. Riding in the back were several female mice. I recognized one of them, the snobby Mrs. Edward S. Smugrat III. I heard Mrs. Smugrat whisper, "Isn't that Stilton, Geronimo Stilton?" "Oh, it's him all right," one of her friends replied. "I hear he is ruined. It all happened in one morning. Can you believe it?" Mrs. Smugrat handed a large coin to her driver and whispered something. He rolled down the window, examined me up and down, then gave the money to me. "Give me a copy of the newspaper," he said. "And keep the change." I blushed with embarrassment. But then I realized I shouldn't be embarrassed. I was just trying to save my newspaper, buy cheddar. I straightened my tail and took the coin. That's one more copy sold, I thought. I felt better after that. I decided to keep going. Papers! Papers! Get the latest news fresh off the press. By the time evening fell, my snout was sunburned. My paws were covered with blisters from standing all day. My spirits were low. And I was as hungry as a jumbo-sized cat. All I wanted to do was go home and curl up with a cream cheese smoothie. But Shift T Pause had called that 11 o'clock meeting. I couldn't let down my staff. So I dragged myself to 85 Curds Court. I saw the baker's sign on the building. Buckwheat's Bakery, the best bread you'll ever buy. I walked inside and found myself in a basement. The smell of freshly baked bread filled my snout. A small rodent with twinkling eyes came toward me. He shook my paw. "Hi there, boss," he said in a friendly voice. "I'm Bagel Buckwheat." I hear business isn't so good. My name is Stilton, Geronimo Stilton, I said. I'm very grateful for your help. We are going through a tough time. But I'm sure we'll pull through. Bagel slapped me on the shoulder. He left a white flower paw print on my sleeve. Of course you'll pull through, boss. He said cheerfully. Never give up, that's what I always say. Keep hanging on and things will work out. You can stay here as long as you need. Which reminds me. I'm not rich, but if you ever need a small loan. I shook my head, touched. What a nice mouse. Bagel gave me a closer look and frowned. Boss, you're looking a little pale. Have you eaten today? Before I could answer, he pulled out a tray from one of the ovens. Then he handed me a piece of French bread covered with melted cheese. Have a good munch, and life will look a lot better, Bagel said. My cheese bread is guaranteed to bring a smile to your snout. Thank you, I said. You are very kind. No need to thank me, Bagel said. I'm happy to help. Now, eat up while the bread is still hot. I took a bite and licked my whiskers. That cheese bread was delicious. I'm too fond of my tail. The whole staff arrived for the meeting. We gather around files of flour sacks. Bagel handed out cheese bread to everyone. Shifty Paws was standing on a sack, adding up the day's sales. Nifty, he squeaked. You all did well. Then he jumped down. We need a big pile of cash to get the publishing house back on its paws. But don't worry. I have an idea. Shift slapped me on the shoulders. Now it's your turn, Stilton. What do you mean, my turn? I asked, puzzled. He winked at me. Stilton, do you know the television game show called The Mousetrap? I nodded. The Mousetrap is a game show with a spooky theme. I try not to watch it. I'm a bit of a fraidy mouse, you see, and spooky things give me nightmares. Well, then you know it takes place at midnight, Shift T continued. The player sits in a mousetrap. When he or she gives the wrong answer, the trap pinches his or her tail, sometimes even chops it off. Right then and there, on live TV. I shuddered. What does this have to do with me? Shift T smiled widely. Because you are the next contestant, Stilton. Putrid cheese puffs. I shrieked. No way. Never. I'm too fond of my tail. I tried to flee, but Shift T grabbed my tail. Now, Stilton, don't disappoint me, he said. You asked me to save this publishing company and I will. But I can't do it alone. I'm just asking for a small favor. I stamped my paw. Small favor? This is a big deal. I could lose my tail. Or you could win $1 million, Shift T pointed out. I paused. $1 million would solve all of our problems. We desperately needed that money. But why does it have to be me? I wailed nervously. Musella stepped up. Nobody here is as smart as you are, Mr. Stilton. You know a little something about everything. If anyone can win on the mousetrap, it's you. I sighed. I hated to admit it, but Musella was right. I am a brainy mouse. Now things are much, 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 much worse than I thought. I cried. But I have no choice. I'll do it. I'll do it for the Rodents Gazette. Shift T Paws let out a cheer. Well done, Stilton. We'll make $1 million. By the way, you are going on tonight's show. Are you ready? Are you? But I didn't hear him. I had fainted again. It's a good thing Marcella always has blue cheese nearby. The mousetrap. Who can blame me for fainting again? The mousetrap is very dangerous. Besides, I'm a very shy mouse. The idea of going on a live game show in front of millions of rodents made my fur stand on end. Bagel gave me another piece of hot cheese bread to cheer me up. He tucked a third into my jacket pocket. You never know, he said. You may get hungry later. But I didn't feel like eating. My tummy was doing flip-flops. Shift T, Paws dragged me out of the bakery and drove me to the television studio. I think he was afraid I would try to run away at the last minute. I hate to say it, but he was right. We pulled up in front of the top TV studios. It was almost midnight and stars shone in the night sky. We stepped out of the car and an assistant came to greet us. Which one of you is the contestant? He asked. I am, I said nervously. He shook my paw. It's an honor to meet you. You must be a very brave mouse to appear on a dangerous game show like the Mousetrap. I did not feel like a very brave mouse. My tail trembled as the assistant led us into the studio. He took us to the host of the show, Vlad Torturetail. He was a pale-looking mouse with pointed teeth. He wore a black suit, a white silk shirt, and a red cape over his shoulders. He looked a fur like a vampire rat. Vlad Torturetail. Torturetail looked me over. So, are you tonight's victim, I mean, contestant? He asked in a creepy voice. I hope you are not too fond of your tail. Heh, heh, heh. I turned pale. I tried to sneak toward the exit, but Shift T, Paws pulled me back. Stilton, don't give up now, he said. Think of your company. Think of your staff. All I can think about is my poor tail. I wailed. Shift T lowered his voice. Come on, Stilton. What's more important? Your tail or the Rodents Gazette? Good question, I replied. Let me go think about that and I'll get back to you. I tried to slip away again, but this time Torturetail grabbed me. By the tail! You can't escape, he hissed. The studio doors are locked. The trap is ready. I gulped. 20 seconds to go, Stilton, Torturetail cackled. Keep your cool, or you'll lose your tail. Then he laughed that creepy laugh of his again. Heh, 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 heh. Good luck, Stilton. Suddenly, the lights in the studio went out. A big grandfather clock began striking the hours. The lights came on. I blinked. Two sturdy rats grabbed me. Your hour has come, Stilton, they growled. They dragged me toward a huge mousetrap. It looked like every rodent's worst nightmare. But I didn't try to fight them. It was too late to turn back now. Behind me, Shift T, Paws called out, Good luck, Stilton, Teal need it, I squeaked weakly. Stay calm, Geronimo, I told myself. Do it for the Rodents Gazette. The rats slipped my tail under the spring in the trap. They put my paws in chains. No, it was definitely too late to turn back. Vlad Torturetail came out holding a microphone. Meet tonight's victim, I mean, contestant Mr. Geronimo Stilton from New Mouse City. Mind your tail, Stilton. I studied the members of the game show jury. They had such strange names and spooky snouts. Torturetail glared at me. Tell us, Mr. Stilton. What do you do for a living? I cleared my throat. I am a publisher and an author. I run the most popular newspaper in New Mouse City, the Rodents Gazette. The game show host snickered. I have heard that business is not so good lately, Mr. Stilton, he said. Is that why you are playing our little game? Do you need the money? Or are you just desperate? Heh. I blushed. What kind of a question was that? I looked at Shift T, pause. He gave me 2 thumbs up and mouthed the words $1 million. I felt a little more confident. The reason I am playing this game is strictly personal, I answered. I prefer to keep it to myself, if you don't mind. Torture Tail snarled. He was disappointed that he hadn't rattled me. Of course, he said. Let's move on to the questions. You know by now that a wrong answer will release the spring on the mousetrap. When the trap falls, it will pinch your tail or even chop it off. I shuddered. My whiskers were quivering uncontrollably. The audience just laughed. A big, stocky rat with coal-black fur and very muscular arms began to pound a gong. Dum, 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 dum. I could feel the excitement in the room begin to rise. The audience was on the edge of their seats. I looked into the control room and saw the director rubbing his paws together with Giuliero. Every rodent on Mouse Island was probably tuned in to see me lose my tail. Here is the first question, Stilton, Torture Tail howled. Mind your tail. Heh. Mind your tail, Stilton. Are you sure you're ready, Mr. Stilton? Are you ready, Mr. Stilton? Torture Tail asked. I took a deep breath. Yes, I said. I'm ready. Are you sure you're ready, Mr. Stilton? Torture Tail asked again. Yes, thank you, I said again. I'm ready. He, ready? Me, yes, very ready. He, are you sure? Me, yes, I'm sure. He, are you very, very sure? Me, I said I'm sure. He, can I start with the first question? Me, yes. He, you know, you still don't look ready to me. Me, I am ready. He, you're looking a little pale. Me, I am not pale. He, I see some sweat on your whiskers. You seem upset. I couldn't take any more of this. Please, ask the question. I begged. Torture Tail seemed pleased. He had gotten me all stressed out, which was his plan all along, of course. The first question is very, very easy, Mr. Stilton, he said. Really easy, but only if you know the answer. Heh. The members of the jury laughed meanly. I wiped the sweat off my whiskers and tried to relax. First question, Torture Tail said in a serious voice. Can you tell us the original meaning of the word Halloween? The black rat began to beat the drum again. Dum, dum, dum. This was an easy one for me. I had recently published a book called It's Halloween, Euphrates Mouse, that included a brief history of Halloween. So I cleared my throat. Actually, yes, I can tell you. Halloween is an old Celtic word. The Celts from Northern Europe were the first to celebrate Halloween. They danced around fires, wearing masks. I paused dramatically. Therefore, the word Halloween comes from All Hallows' Eve. Is that your final answer? Torture Tail asked me. His beady eyes seemed to pierce through my fur. Yes, I said confidently. Are you sure? He asked again in a menacing voice. I am quite sure, I said. Torture Tale seemed disappointed. He shook his head. The answer is a pay it. The jury began to jeer. Boo! I realized they were disappointed, too. They wanted to see blood. My blood! Torture Tale asked the second question. What is the name of the substance used by the ancient Egyptians to preserve dead bodies? It also gave us the word mummy. At first, I thought my tale was lost. I could not think of the answer. The drum boomed in the background. Dum, dum, dum. Then I remembered an adventure I had in Egypt. I wrote about it in The Curse of the Cheese Pyramid. I smiled. I am sure the name is mum, I said. It was a sticky mixture of bitumen, myrrh, and other substances used to preserve dead bodies. Torture Tale scowled. Correct, he howled. The jury jeered again. Boo! Boo! Off stage, Shift T Pause shot me a big grin. Things were going well. I still had my tail. And it hadn't even been pinched yet. Third question. Torture Tale shrieked. What is the name of the legendary king who led the Knights of the Rat Table? This one was very easy. My Aunt Sweetfur read me stories of the knights when I was just a wee mouselet. King Rather, I replied. Torture Tale scowled. Correct again. The jury booed me once more. Then they began to mutter among themselves. These questions are much too easy. They promised us blood, but so far they haven't even pinched his tail. That Stilton is as sharp as a block of cheddar. I smiled under my whiskers. Torture Tale looked miserable. He read the fourth question. What is the name of the Irish writer who wrote the famous book Dracula in 1897? Bram Mauser. I answered immediately. Torture Tale mumbled under his whiskers. Correct. Boo! The jury shouted. Torture Tale cleared his throat. The last question is worth $1 million, he said. No rodent has ever answered the final question correctly before. It has 5 parts. 1. Who wrote the novel Rattenstein? 2. When was the author born and when did the author die? 3. When was the novel written and why? 4. What is the name of the mad scientist who creates the monster? 5. Where does the action take place? You have 1 minute to give your answer, Mr. Stilton. I closed my eyes and tried to concentrate. This question was harder than a block of stale cheddar. The drum pounded in my ears. Dum, dum, dum. As the head of a publishing company, I know a lot about books. But if I made even one mistake, I could bid my tail bye-bye. We're waiting, Stilton, Torture Tale hissed. It was now or never. I shouted out the answers. 1. The novel Rattenstein was written by Ratty Wollstonecraft Shelley. 2. She was born in 1797 and died in 1851. 3. Shelley began writing the novel in 1816. She was at a party with friends, and everyone was telling scary stories. This gave her the idea for a monster created by a mad scientist. 4. The mad scientist's name was Victor Rattenstein. 5. The action takes place in Ingolstadt, in Bavaria, which is in southern Germany. The studio went totally quiet. The drumming stopped. Torture Tale looked up at the director. The director frowned and shrugged. Torture Tale turned back to the audience. The answer to the final question is correct. Torture Tale choked on the last word. The audience cheered. The jury jeered. Shift T Pause raced up to me and gave me a hug. You won $1 million, Stilton. He cried. I was so relieved. I felt like a puddle of nacho cheese sauce that has melted in the hot sun. My tail was safe, and so was the rodent's gazette. Shift. Paws gave me a hug. The mysterious rat is. The two stocky rats let me out of the trap. Torture Tail reluctantly pushed in a wheelbarrow filled with gold coins. Shift T, Paws happily took the wheelbarrow from him. When you get right down to it, being on the mousetrap was a big success, he cried. An armored truck took us back to 85, Curd's Court. The morning sun was just rising, but a crowd of reporters had gathered at the door. They began shouting questions. Mr. Stilton, are you happy you saved your tail? Tell us, were you nervous? Mr. Stilton, would you do it again? I did a victory lap through the crowd. Not for £1,000,000 of cheddar. I squeaked. Shift T, Paws and I went inside the bakery, slamming the door behind us. Bagel Buckwheat approached us, carrying a large cheese pizza. He had written a message in anchovies. Well done, Stilton. I was touched. Thank you, Bagel, I said. You are a true friend. Thea ran up, waving a piece of paper. I've discovered the identity of the mysterious rat, she announced. It's Dash, who is it? I squeaked. What is his name? Shift T asked. Tell us. Tell us, shouted the staff. Thea smiled. The mysterious one-eyed rat is named Flusher Potty Paws, she said. Until 3 days ago, he owned a company that made sanitary fittings. Sanitary fittings? Musella repeated. She looked puzzled. That's toilets to you and me, said Thea, grinning. That figures. Shift T, Paws said. Potty Paws started his company 30 years ago, Thea continued. He is very, very rich. He invented a one-of-a-kind toilet with a warmed-up seat. That's right. I shouted. I've seen the ads for Potty Paws toilets. I picked up the phone to give him a call. Then I changed my mind. I want to go talk to him snout to snout. I said. I left Shift T, Paws to count the gold coins. Then I called a taxi to take me to 17 Swiss Cheese Center. That used to be the address of the Rodent's Gazette. Now it was the home of the roaring rat. But not for long, I promised myself. I had my tail. I had my staff. I had $1,000,000. That Flusher Potty Paws had better watch out. Mr. Flusher Potty Paws. I rang the doorbell at 17 Swiss Cheese Center. Let me in, I said forcefully. My name is Stilton, Geronimo Stilton. The door buzzed open. I stormed down the hallway to my ex-office. Then I pushed open my office door. A one-eyed rat sat behind the desk. He wore a black patch on his other eye. It made him look like some kind of pirate. He was short and stocky, and his fur was shiny with far gel. He wore a striped suit and a shirt the color of American cheese. He smelled of expensive blue cheese aftershave. He wore a gold ring with a big diamond in it. His heavy gold watch was studded with diamonds, too. He looked like a big show-off. Flusher Potty Paws growled at me. By the stench of 1,000 toilet brushes. What do you want? Potty Paws tried to look threatening, but he didn't scare me. I had survived the mousetrap, after all. My name is Stilton, Geronimo Stilton, I said proudly. I run the Rodent's Gazette. Trumpeting toilets, he roared. What are you doing here? This is no longer your office. I laughed. I just won $1,000,000. Now I, too, am very, very rich. You can't use your money to ruin my business anymore. Potty Paws glared at me. He looked like a tough rat. But I can be tough, too. I kept going. This town is too small for the both of us, Potty Paws, I said. The fight is even now. Potty Paws turned pale. He suddenly looked sad. No, he said. No, what? I asked. He shook his head. This fight is not even, he said glumly. I was puzzled. I was expecting more of a fight from this rat. Why not? I asked. Potty Paws did not answer for a while. Then he rested his head on his desk and burst into tears. This fight will never be even, because you are clever, and I don't have what it takes to run a publishing house. Potty Paws sobbed and sobbed. He practically cried a river of tears. I couldn't help it. I started to feel sorry for him. Signed toilet paper. Potty Paws kept sobbing. I never went to college, he said, weeping. I'm a self-made mouse. I wanted to have a publishing company. I thought all you had to do was pay for it. But I was wrong. I walked up to him and put a paw on his shoulder. Cheer up, I said. You do have a beard. The roaring rat. Potty Paws opened a drawer in his desk. He took out some papers filled with numbers. Take a look at this, he said. The newsdealers are returning all of my newspapers. The bookstores are returning all of my books. The readers only want the Rodents Gazette and Stilton Publishing. Potty Paws began to sob again. I looked at the list of books put out by the Roaring Rat Group. I understood why the public didn't like them. The titles were horrible. It took pity on poor Potty Paws. It's not your fault you didn't succeed, I told him. You can't become a publisher overnight. It took me 20 years to learn the business. I was only 13 when my grandfather began taking me to book fairs. Potty Paws blew his snout into a big red handkerchief with yellow dots. You're just saying that to cheer me up, he said. I'm an ignorant mouse. A loser. A third-rat rodent. I hate to see a mouse get down on himself. Come on, don't cry. I said. I'm sure you're a fine mouse. Easy for you to say, Potty Paws grumbled. Everyone on Mouse Island knows you. Your books are great. I've read every single one of them. He reached into his drawer again and took out one of my books, For Mice Deep in the Jungle. Would you sign it for me? He asked. I thought about the perfect thing to write. Then I signed it, so my new friend, Flusher Potty Paws. May he soon be signing his own books. I was only 13 when my grandfather began taking me to book fairs. He sighed. Thank you, Mr. Stilton. But I'm afraid the best I can ever hope for is to sign a roll of toilet paper. First rat art. Potty Paws was so grateful, he offered to give our offices back to us. I called Marcella, who was happy to hear the news. That's wonderful, Mr. Stilton, she said. Teal tell the others. Moments later, I heard a shout. Watch your whiskers, here comes Shifty Paws. I knew what was coming. But the door flew open before I could move out of the way. Splat! The door slammed into me once again. Shifty Paws burst into the room. His arms were loaded with books. As he put them back on the shelves, he whistled a happy tune, 99 Morsels of Cheese. Potty Paws watched Shifty with a sad look on his face. Just look at all of your books and newspapers, he said. You are lucky to have such an interesting job. All I ever get to deal with are flushers and toilet seats. But you make lots of money doing it, I pointed out. He shook his head. There are things money can't buy, Stilton. Like culture, for example. Suddenly, I heard cries outside the window. I looked out to see a crowd of rodents. They were all shouting, "We want the Rodents Gazette! We want the Rodents Gazette!" I smiled. You want the newspaper? I shouted back. Then you shall have it. As of tomorrow, everything is back to normal. You will find the Rodents Gazette on newsstands. You will find Stilton Publishing's books in every bookstore. The crowd cheered. Hurrah for the Rodents Gazette! I turned back to the office and saw We Want the Rodents Gazette. Potty Paws standing in the corner. He looked like he was going to cry again. Shifty Paws must have noticed, too. He ran up to me, his eyes glittering with excitement. Stilton, I have a brilliant idea, he said. When you get right down to it, why don't you two open a publishing house together? You can provide your experience, and Potty Paws can provide the money. You can put out art books. Potty Paws love it. And I have a great idea for a name. We can call it Toilet Art. That's not bad, I said, trying to be nice. But maybe we should go with a more classic name. Like First Rat TRT Great. Potty Paws cried. He crushed me in a tight hug. Then he leaned out the window and shouted, I have a publishing house, too. Me, Flusher Potty Paws. The crowd stared up at him, bewildered. It's called First Rat Art, he continued. I don't want to brag, but we're talking high culture here. The crowd was silent for a moment. Then they all shouted, yes. Hurrah for Flusher Potty Paws. Hurrah for First Rat Art. Micah Nazara that, scribble scratch. The next morning, I saw a new sign on the door of 17 Swiss Cheese Center. HRS Stirritart. Serious Arty Smarty Art Books. Potty Paws was already settled in his new office, right next to mine. He was giving some notes to his secretary, Scrubban Scribble Scratch. He is a gray rodent with a bald head and thick glasses. Art. Yes, art. Potty Paws was saying. Scribble Scratch was quickly writing down everything Potty Paws said. Art. Yes, art, the secretary murmured. Just then, my global culture consultant, GCC, walked past the office. He is Mausjes van Ratten, the uncle of my assistant editor, Pinky Pink. Have you met Mausjes? I met him during one of my many adventures. He's been a good friend of mine ever since. However, our ideas on books are as different as blue cheese and Monterey Jack. He thinks every book needs to be intellectual with a capital I. Mausjes stopped in the doorway. Excuse me, but I believe that art should always have a capital A, he said in a thundering voice. Potty Paws nodded. Rumbling restrooms, you're right. Let's fix that, Scribble Scratch. Art with a capital A, Scribble Scratch sighed. Art with a capital. Mausjes grinned and walked into my office. Holy cheese! At long last, there is someone in this office who cares about culture with a capital C. A true intellectual with a capital I. Potty Paws looked as pleased as a shopper who's just found out there's a half-price sale on cheese. Me? An intellectual with a capital I? Why not? Let's talk about it. Mausjes saw his chance. I have lots of ideas, you know, for some really artistic, intellectual books. Potty Paws waved his paw at me. Come and listen to this smart rodent's ideas with me, Stilton. But I had already slunk off. Recollections of a Rat. 6 months later, I heard a car horn outside my home. It was 7 o'clock at night. I looked out the window. A limousine the color of cheese was parked on the street. A mouse wearing a striped suit was leaning out the window. It was Flusher Potty Paws, of course. "Come on down, Stilton, it's late," he called up. "It's time for the exhibit of impressionable paintings. And after that, there's the room music concert." I went downstairs and got in the car. "I hope you don't mind me correcting you," I squeaked. "But the paintings are called impressionist, not impressionable. And it's chamber music, not room music." Potty Paws raised his bushy eyebrows. "Prancing plungers, I didn't know that," he thundered. Then he shouted to his secretary in the front seat. "Make a note of that, Scribble Scratch." "Right away, sir," Scribble Scratch said. Potty Paws chuckled and nudged me with his elbow. "At this rate, I'll soon be a truly intellectual mouse," he said. "I'm already writing my autobiography. I think I'll call it Recollections of a Rat." Potty Paws got a dreamy look on his face. "I could print the whole thing on a single roll of toilet paper. That way you can read it one piece at a time, tearing off a piece as you go. We could get a toilet paper company to sponsor us. Fluffy Bottom 83 maybe. What do you think?" Before I could answer, he roared at his secretary. "Make a note of that, Scribble Scratch." Potty Paws turned back to me. "So, what do you think, partner?" I didn't want to tell Potty Paws what I really thought of his stinky idea. "I'll, think about it," I said. "It certainly is original." Then we reached the exhibit of paintings. We got out of the limousine and went to the art gallery. First Rat Art had organized a party to kick off the exhibit. Potty Paws was thrilled to be there. "I am Flusher Potty Paws, from the First Rat Art Group," he announced. He began shaking hands with all of the reporters and art critics. "Hi, there. How are you? If I do say so myself, IT doesn't stink. Ha, ha, ha." After a while, he came up to me. "Thank you, Geronimo. I am so happy to be involved in publishing. You have made my wish come true. You are a true friend." I was impressed. Maybe Potty Paws really can become an intellectual mouse with a capital I. Just then, I heard a cry. "Watch your whiskers, here comes Shifty Paws." This time, I scurried out of the way as fast as I could. The door opened, and missed me. "Hey, there, Stilton," Shifty said, shaking my paw. "It's been great working with you." "It's nice to work with you, too, Shifty," I said, smiling. I really meant it. Everything had turned out fine, thanks to Shifty Paws.